All right, we're back. It's myself, Colin, my good friend Clark. Clark is in Georgia, the country, not the state. I'm in the Great Pacific Northwest, although I've changed my background again to, well, our Middle East, but to represent the desert planet of Arrakis. And today we're going to be doing just a kind of, well, it'll be even less structured than our normal episodes. Reactions to the movie Dune, the Denis Villeneuve's new movie, which covers roughly the first half of the book. And so good news. The second movie was greenlit, I believe. It's been greenlit, yes. So there will be a second movie, which is, for fans of Dune, is just wonderful. But it also, in order to truly understand what's going on, you need that second part. Clark, what'd you think of the film? Generally, and then we can get into specifics or however you want to do it.
Well, I'll go ahead and admit that I went in totally raw.
Yeah.
Just except for like that conversation we had. I guess like I'm just going to talk about it as a movie.
Right, as a movie.
So I would say that like my overall score for it would be a 7 out of 10. And I would say like if you go in for the visuals, and kind of in the mood and and things like that, it's definitely an 8 out of 10. But it's kind of like I don't know, I didn't really feel like that there was much of a plot to it. And you said that it covered like half of the story.
I mean, maybe not
and
even
I know
half.
that like for people who have read the whole book, I know that they can kind of like see more of the subtext. But for me, I know that they just like mentioned that they needed spice for for space travel. And I remember you saying that they use spice for those special mental powers that they demonstrate. But if I had not heard that from you, I would not have been able to intuit that like they can like see into the future, or like like calculate numbers in their heads or whatnot without with the spice. So
yeah.
So that's my overall take on it. I think that like if you go in for the visual experience first and foremost, I can't remember how you pronounce it. There's this old movie, Aguirre, Wrath of God.
Aguirre, Wrath of Death, Son Gottes.
Aguirre.
Yes, that movie is insane. I love that movie.
I love that movie too. And if you feel like something like that, then yeah, I totally recommend Dune. With the caveat being that, it told like the first half of the story. And it just kind of like the way it ended, it was like, well, I'm glad there's going to be a sequel, because, if it just left it on that, I'd be like, okay, that's a good introduction for the book, but it just doesn't really stand on its own as a story for me.
Yeah. That was, so having read the book, having really liked the book, as you could probably tell from that earlier Dune episode we did, yes, I really liked the story. I like the world a lot. Yeah, visually great. Can tell that Denis Villeneuve's a big fan. But I was really glad that I knew the world of Dune like I do, because otherwise I'd have like, there was no clear reason of why anyone was fighting over Arrakis in the movie. In the book, it's made really explicitly clear why it's so important. Because you can't, in a world, there's so many things that they just did not. And again, to be fair, I don't know how you would necessarily have done that. I'm not a filmmaker, but it's like, well, why are they even bothering? Like, the Fremen don't want the Offworlders there. Why do they even bother with any of it? It's like the only reason there's interstellar travel, the only reason there's anything in terms of a galactic empire is because of spice. Because in a world where you're not allowed to have computers, humans have to do everything. And in order to warp through space, there has to be, they have navigators. Now, you did see navigators in in the movie when the Herald of the Change comes to Caladan, you do see guild navigators in the white suits completely covered with spice in their helmets.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So this is a thing where I was like, oh, that's great, this is wonderful. That was my reaction because I knew what Villeneuve was referencing. But if you have not read the film, if you have not read the book, that was like, how the heck are you supposed to make sense of this? So the whole time I was like, I watched it with my wife and she'd read the book but a long time ago. I had to remind her like, oh, and this is that thing and this is this other thing. It's like, it's always hard when you're working on transferring a story across different forms of media. But I mean, to reference what we talked about last time with Tolkien, I mean, the movies, Lord of the Rings movies, not the Hobbit films, we'll forget those happened, but the Lord of the Rings films were really good at this. They changed things, yes. There was a lot of hat tips within those films to the stories for the diehard fans, but they also worked as films and drew a lot of people into Tolkien's work. I kind of worry that Villeneuve's film, while awesome for Dune fans, is not really going to draw people into Herbert's world. And that makes me a bit like, so it's like a success and it's like disappointment because if you don't, I know it's a very autist thing to get wrapped up about and to be quite pedantic about, but if you literally don't understand why spice is so important, the whole story falls apart. That's like saying, to reference what we talked about last time we talked about Dune. That's like saying, like explaining all of American foreign policy if you don't understand what oil is. Okay. Why are they getting fights? Why does America go 8,000, 10,000 miles away and fight these weird wars for this, like in these countries where there's like no water and like, what? Is it for freedom? No, it's because it's resources. It's a resource rich area. But though I don't see any resources, I look around and I see desert. Yeah, well, look under the ground. So like they talk about the spice, right, in the film, but it's like you have to show what the spice does and what it allows people to do. Otherwise, it makes the motivation for the conflict, for all of it, is like, again, like I said, why don't they just leave Arrakis? Why don't they leave the Fremen alone? It's because why do they spend so much money? Because they need spice. It's the only place you can get it. Yeah, if you don't get that, everything else falls apart. One sec. That was a disappointing thing. I will say, not to just, I mean, I liked the movie. I did not love it, but I did like it. Visually is amazing. It's not my vision of Arrakis, but it's definitely, I'm not the director, it's Denis Villeneuve's vision of Arrakis, and it is amazingly pretty. Really well cast. Really well cast. Timothée Chalamet as Paul was really great. He seemed to be a little bit out of it in terms of the acting. I guess that's because Paul is kind of coming into his own and, his powers are awakening and all this stuff. I don't know exactly. There must have been some sort of decision being made about how Paul was going to act. I was okay. So it was a little bit weird there, but generally speaking, yeah, great casting, particularly with Paul. Jason Momoa is great as Duncan Idaho. That was cool. You actually get to see like Duncan Idaho's death, which, if you remember the original David Lynch film, you don't really get to see that happen. It's like, oh, he's dead now. So that was cool. The way that the like physical world was portrayed in terms of the technology was pretty amazing. All like the still suits looked very functional, looked very real. That's really cool. I like how they kind of the sandworm design was a little bit different than previous visual like artist renditions or different film versions, because you got the Lynch film and then you got the sci-fi miniseries. I still think the sci-fi miniseries is pretty good. I don't know what that is, perhaps a controversial statement amongst Dune fans. but it was cool. So there's still sandworms. It's cool they changed it up a little bit where it's got just like the teeth coming out. And there's like there's no the mouth doesn't even really close. It's just a maw. That was pretty cool, I thought. Um,
I really liked how huge they were
yeah,
because you know, just when I would hear about sandworms, I would think of them as being like the size of whales, maybe.
yeah,
But they made them so big that you know they when they ate up that machine,
yeah. The
that
spice
was like,
harvester.
yeah, the spice harvester. You know, like it was like seeing something bigger than a whale, something that could like just swallow up an oil tanker.
Yeah,
And I thought that was really cool how they just made it that big because like again, like in a sci-fi setting, like why should they be afraid of animals by that point? Because
right.
they have those ships, they have those lasers. Like, why should they care? Oh, wow, that can eat like an oil tanker. Yeah, okay, well, I get why they're scared now.
Yeah, that's my favorite scene from the book, the spice harvester scene. And so I was really glad that they got that one. They did that scene so well. That's my favorite scene from the entire book, actually. Um, well, and then my second favorite scene from the book is the Paul's fight with Jamis, um, which they threw in at the end of this movie. It happened a little differently than it did in the book, but that's fine. It did seem like it got thrown in at the end. The fight with Jamis is relatively brief in the book, but is an important thing. It signals sort of Paul and Jessica's entry into the siege, into siege Tabur, and that was I mean, again, it's one of these things where if you've read the book, you know what's going on. Cool the way they shot the fight. I thought that was neat. Like again, all of the fight choreography was in the movie was Balintawak Filipino martial arts. So that's neat.
Mm.
Somebody who has family in the Philippines, and I've done a tiny bit of training in Filipino martial arts. That was neat to see. Since the world
Yeah,
of it's
come to think
hand-to-hand
of it,
combat with
yeah.
knives, and so yeah, and Filipino martial arts is very focused on knife, stick, and sword fighting. It's a weapons-based, generally a weapons-based system. So that was neat to see that they had used that. The fight with Jamas though is like it's actually this big. It's sort of it's not a small deal. Like the fact that Paul is able to best a Fremen in fighting hand to hand in single combat is pretty impressive. Um, it also signals right like his entry into the siege as being now he is no longer just an Atreides. He is also becoming a Fremen. I hope I got that from the scene, but I hope that people who haven't read the book got that from the scene too, because then that's where the movie ends, right? Spoiler alerts throughout all this about the film. But um, I'll put that in the beginning of I'll put that in the description too. Spoiler alert. But yeah, it's visually great. The cast is amazing. I hope we get a little more story, like you said in the second one, because there's so much story that was hinted at that was not. And again, you don't want you want to show not tell. I understand that, but yeah, the motivations were severely lacking, I think. Like, and ideally, you don't want to have audiences have to like. You want them to read more if they want to, but you don't want to make it so like they feel like they like, oh, I didn't read the book, so I have no idea what's going on. I think that was my biggest. I mean, critique is maybe a strong word, but I was like, oh, um, I don't know, but yeah, the fighting was great. I thought that was amazing. The hand-to-hand combat was great. Um, since that's really one of the unique things about the world of Dune is that with the personal shields, you essentially make shooting really is more between ships. Like if you're going to do there's not going to be a ton of like Star Wars blaster battles because people have personal shields. So there's going to be a lot of you have to get up in somebody's biz and stab them, which is again one of the things I really love about the world of Dune, because it's this kind of, it's a neo-feudalistic world where there's still hand-to-hand combat. So I appreciate the way they showed that in the film. That's neat. Yeah, I don't know. The sandwalk was cool. They walking without rhythm. It's
Oh
always
yeah, yeah.
when you read the book, is you have to kind of always imagine what that looks like. Like, how would you actually walk without rhythm? But the way that they showed that is pretty neat. Them when they're out on the open desert trying to move. I watched an interview and they said that there was like a dance. They got like a dance choreographer in LA to develop that sandwalk, and then they had to go to like the LA beach and like practice it on the sand. This kind of hilarious image of just like people out on the sand in LA, just like, I mean, there's already weird people on the beach in LA, and then you got some people doing like Fremen sandwalks. I just the mental image was great. Um,
Yeah.
so it's nice little things, right? Like lots of attention to detail. You can tell that Villeneuve really loves the story. Um, and it's great. I mean, as a fan, it's great that he puts all this time and effort into the little details. But you just hope that people like the larger audiences buy in enough to where they also want to come back for the second one. I think that will be the case. And I do think I hope a lot of people will be like, geez, I'm going to read the book and then wait for the second one, so that, because it's going to be a bit before they can make the second one, I think, with COVID and everything. Read the book and then come back and like, oh, okay, yeah. So it'll
I
make more
think
sense.
that I think that one thing in its favor right now is that it only really covers half of the story. So,
Yeah.
I was wondering, how do I go about this? Because, right now I just don't have enough time to go through Dune. But like, should I go and not knowing anything? And someone said, well, don't worry about it too much because it tells half of the story. So just watch that, and then like when it comes out eventually, you will have read the book, for the next part. So I think that worked out for them.
Yeah.
If a lot of it has to do with happenstance, but I think it worked out okay.
Yeah. I yeah. No, that's a good point.
And
I'm
one
just trying.
thing is that
Go ahead.
often when you watch a movie, unless the book is extremely well written, or there's just a lot of content that's missing. Uh-huh. The You don't really feel obliged to read the book if you've watched the movie, at least for me.
Yeah,
In this case, I felt like, oh, okay, I still feel like reading the book because
you still
I
should.
didn't get the whole story. So I'm like, oh, okay, that was a nice introduction,
There's tons.
So
One of the things that Herbert really does well is talk about why characters are motivated to do the things they do. There's a lot of that, actually. There's an insane amount of it in the book. You really do know why they're doing what they're doing. You don't have to agree with it, but you're like, oh, this makes sense. This follows, this follows, this follows, this follows, this follows, this follows. You don't get a lot of that in the movie. People are just doing things. Which, okay, there's some mystery there. Like, well, why are they? Why is Baron Harkonnen playing this game? It's like, if you read the book, you know why he's doing it. So it's nice. I mean, maybe that wasn't done on purpose. Maybe Villeneuve quite rightly recognized, I can't put everything into the movie because you never can. I'm going to put just enough to hat tip to the people who know, and to entice others who have not read the book yet to read the book, um, and to enter into one of the weirdest, most obscure, nerdy fandoms, which is the Dune fans. They're all like Star Wars is like, yeah, it's fun, it's Star Wars, right? And then like Star Trek is like progress, and then Lord of the Rings, and I guess I'll raise my hand for that one, is like beware of progress. And then you get Dune, which is like ecology matters and systems of governments matters over generations. It's like this like history nerds, the sci-fi version or something like that. Dune. And so yes, we can always overlap in our fandoms, and that's fine. But Dune fans are kind of, I like them, but there's, man, we're strange. Going to Dune, like even just the Dune subreddit is pretty great. There's some even more weird like Dune meme groups which are just hilarious. But yeah, there's like Dune fans are strange, is my point. Um, so we maybe we'll have more strange Dune fans, which is kind of the whole idea. It's there's that joke what a Dune is a Star Wars for goths or whatever it is. Like, yeah, it's like it's like we dress in black even though it's in the hot and we wear in the hot sun and we wear still suits and we're all really moody because our mom made us this way with selective breeding, and then we had our we just inhale a lot of drugs and all of a sudden we can see outcomes. Speaking of the whole drug aspect of spice, which we talked like I think we talked, I know I did explain basically the way that works in the earlier episode we did on Dune and what Dune might have to say about US foreign policy. I'll link to that in the description. It was cool. I don't know if it was clear to you, not having read the book, but the way that Paul was seeing when he starts becoming more and more prescient, right? Because he's got this like locked genetic power locked away, but it has to be activated, right? Through Bene Gesserit training, but also just drugs, the spice in the air, in the food when he's on Arrakis. The way he starts seeing potential like potentialities, he starts seeing different outcomes that could happen, but he doesn't know which one it's going to be. Was that clear to you that that was what was happening? Because there's these parts with like particularly the one that comes to mind is at the end, his fight with Jamis, when they meet Stilgar in the desert, they meet the Fremen, and he's like, he knows he's going to meet this guy, and Jamis could either be his friend or his enemy, and so that he starts seeing like, what would that be like if he's my friend? And they cut through like, and it's like he's going to be a great friend to me. And so Paul's like, oh, I'm going to meet this guy. He's going to be a great friend. And so then he sees him. He's like, oh, you're going to be a great friend. But like, no, actually, he starts seeing then the other visions because the path has diverged. Oh, I'm actually going to fight this guy and he might kill me. So I don't know if that was clear. They did. I thought it was nice the way they did that with editing. I hope that was clear to people who have not read the book. The way that Paul's prescience is described in the book is that he can like sometimes it's like he's in a hilly region and he can come out on top of a hill and see what's out there. So he can kind of see the future, but then he'll make a decision and he goes down into a valley. He no longer can see, and then he'll come up. So he gets glimpses of what will happen, what might happen. But throughout the story, and I don't want to spoil too much because this goes on for several books or multiple books, Paul is trying to divert and trying to steer the future because he can see it, but the future is also changing with every single action that Paul and everyone else makes. So there's this anxiety of I have to keep track of the future. And that's sort of the great burden of being the Kwisatz Haderach, is that he can like it's the burden maybe of a prophet in a sense, because it's like, well, this might happen or that might happen. How do I prevent the worst from happening? They did mention this in the movie. The worst that can happen is this sort of interstellar. They called it a crusade, but it's a jihad. It's called jihad in the book, a holy war that takes entire planets, like that wipes out populations of entire planets. Paul desperately wants to avoid that. So, but it's not like he's all knowing or all powerful. And he just is more tapped into the way that like time works, I guess. And so, but he's still mortal. He's still stuck in time as we all are moving forward in time. And so, I don't want to spoil anything any more than that, but the way that Paul's future telling abilities, his prescience, was shown in the movie, I thought was nice because it shows the limitations. It's like, okay, you got this big power, but it's not like you can. Every single action changes the future too. So the burden, like I said, the burden of steering the futures is a lot of what Paul has to deal with. And there's lots of good bits in there about, at least in the book. We'll see how it ends up looking in the second movie, but lots of good bits in the book about like when you have such power, how does that change you as a leader? And if you're a leader, what are you really doing? How are you making the decisions you're making? Herbert has, I think, a lot to say in the book specifically about politics with Paul. Because Paul is sort of messianic The second book's called Dune Messiah. Paul is messianic, but is not a Messiah. So he has the qualities of like, in many respects, of like an Old Testament prophet, but he's not an Old Testament prophet. So he's like some people, right there, and Herbert was very clear that we should be wary of people who take power and want power. And to tie it back to what we talked about, the most recent episode with Tolkien, is maybe that's something that ties both of the worlds together, at least thematically, is that there's this beware of people who lust for power, because they are usually the last people you want in charge. And even somebody noble starts out with the best of intentions. We all know what that can do, when gifted with sort of supernatural mind powers or drug-induced mind powers, plus people who desperately want a leader or desperately want to change things. Because I mean that was something I liked about the movie, in terms of bringing at least the first half of the book to life. Is it's clear that the Fremen are pissed off, and it's clear why. Even if you don't totally understand, like, the spice is valuable, okay, I don't really know why. It's clear that they don't want the off-worlders on the planet. Like, it's clear that they don't like that at all. It's exploitative. They get hunted by the Harkonnens. And so, yeah, they're looking for someone, at least on Algaib, the voice from the outer world, right, to come and bring them out of whatever problems they have. Although, as Villeneuve quite nicely shows in the movie, that entire prophecy is seeded. That's planted by the Bene Gesserit, like, years in the past, to help anybody who gets stuck amongst the Fremen. So there's this weird kind of self-fulfilling prophecy quality. Again, I don't want to spoil too much for those who haven't read the whole book, yourself included, Clark, but I would really recommend it. There's just like, self-fulfilling prophecies are dangerous. Beware of things like trying to use religion to control people backfires really badly. There's also a lot to be said about that. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Villeneuve and all the production team and everyone crams it into the second film. There's a lot left to say, and I'm just like, I hope you can squeeze it in there. It's probably going to be another really long film, but I hope you can squeeze it in, because there's a lot.
I felt like it was only about like a third of the story.
I know, it's actually it's like people say the first half, and I was like, the first half, I guess it's like, it's more like the first third.
I mean, just like, I mean, again, I did not go in knowing much of the lore.
Yeah.
So I was kind of looking at more, I don't know, almost more functionalist, like how everything like fits together.
Right.
And just with like, I don't know if this will get people mad, but it reminded me a bit of, Princess of Mars, Edgar Rice Burroughs. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I don't mean like that Disney movie that they made a while ago that nobody liked. I mean like the good old fashioned kind, and I don't mean that disparagingly, because like they have like the royal, well, you have the noble houses and you have the emperor, and they're on a desert world and they don't fight each other with guns, like they use swords and such. And I really liked visually how they had those ziggurats at the beginning, when they went into the city. So it really had, like, for me at least, like a sword and sorcery feel to it, or a sword and sandal. And
A
again,
sword and
I mean,
sand. Sword and
yeah,
sand. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, sand on the sandal.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it just kind of felt like, like not looking at it with the lore, but just as how it was. What, like with like Leto Atreides, played by Oscar Isaac. It almost felt like he was the protagonist, and it was his movie. And then like, like Paul kind of like transitions to be the Avenger, almost like, like Mark Antony or Octavian in Julius Caesar, where the main character is killed midway through, and then
Yeah.
it's up to others to avenge him. And then it ends with him becoming a man at the end by, defeating that enemy in combat.
Yeah.
but like just looking at that all together just kind of felt like the first third of something. So, in Hollywood, they love making trilogies, so hopefully they'll do it like that.
Yeah,
Because if
actually,
there's a lot of plot and a lot of story left, then maybe
well,
make it two movies.
and one thing too is that the book takes place over the course of years, and so
Yeah.
actors aging is not a problem as long as it's not too long. Timothée Chalamet is already, he's like 25, so he's already playing a younger person, but he looks very young. But if I mean him getting older is no problem for the story. Like that is totally fine.
And with Hollywood today, they have so many techniques of making people look any age they want.
Well, that's true, but I mean you won't even have to do that stupid deep fake crap.
Yeah.
I hate that shit. Sorry, it's like I really just dislike it. Just get a new actor or something like that and have them play. It's okay. It's okay to have different actors play the same character in different films. It really is okay. Um, it happens maybe that's just in theater. That's like a thing. So like, that's okay. I know that they don't like doing that, but yeah, we'll see. I mean, I'm hopeful. I liked it. I wanted to love it, but I ended up just liking it. And you know what? I'm not going to be making a movie version of Dune anytime soon. So all of my critiques, while I think they're there, or ultimately should all be tempered with the fact that I can't do that. So yeah, I'm like a million times better than what I could do. And it was a good movie. I think I need to watch it again. I didn't have a chance to watch it again before we did this. So I think the second time, I think I'll second time of watching the films, you always, it's that second time. The third, fourth, fifth, sixth time it changes too, but there's something about that second time of rewatching something that I think is important. So but yeah, I will say this: the music by Hans Zimmer was great. I mean, intensely good score. There's weird score. I listened to the score a few weeks. They put it out on Spotify a few weeks before the movie came out. So I was like the score I had listened to, and like while working one day, I was putting it on while grading. I was like, this is the weirdest score, but I love it. But it's strange. Like they have like a tabla drum, but then like weird chanting, and then there's like all this other stuff, and it's like a kind of an electronic score, but then kind of not an electronic score, and you're like, this is so strange, but in a good way. I watched a little interview with Hans Zimmer, and he's like, "Yeah, it's future music. Like this is music from the far future. So what is music for them? Like it could be all these kinds of things. There's the bagpipes mixed with all this other stuff, and yeah, it's I liked that. I
I
appreciated the score quite a bit. So
I thought with the music in like the visions of the future, like when you watch it in a theater and like and you can't like take a break or anything, it really puts you in a dream like state after a while.
well, and that's dreaming is a big part of the story.
Yeah.
Is Paul's dreams? Yeah,
It does have a dream-like quality to it, after a certain point,
yeah.
and sometimes it kind of feels like, I don't know, like when you wake up in the middle of the night and you're just like up for a little bit. It felt kind of like that at times.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
If I rewatch it, I don't really feel like doing it in a theater again because it was a pretty long haul, and you know
I watched it at home, so I didn't want to go to a theater because I didn't want to have to wear, to be blunt, I didn't have to wear a fucking mask for 2.5 hours, many hours. I was like, I one of the jobs I do, I have to wear a mask while I'm there. I'm like, I'm
yeah.
not wearing a mask in my spare time. I'm just not. So I watched it at home with bowl of Thai food in my lap and a beer, and it was amazing. I was like, this is better than, I mean, I know I love movie theater, I love the big screen experience, but I'm like, this is 10 times better than what I haven't seen it in the theater.
Yeah.
So perhaps that's bad on me, but in the crazy era we live in, I
No
was like,
one
I'm
in
gonna stream it.
Georgia, no one in Georgia wears masks in theaters.
Oh,
They'll
that's
wear them everywhere else, but they'll take them off for the theater. So,
science. I
cold
think, and
weather.
by the way, I think that's great, but that makes also no sense. But that's that we've already had the rant about that. So in that other episode we did. That's okay. Uh yeah. Well, hey, I'm glad you liked it. I liked it. I know we're busy. You and I, we both have, this is, we make zero money doing this. That ad revenue, no ad revenue. The non-existent Patreon, we just sit around and we talk, and we're glad that anybody watches this, because, and please feel free to chime in on comments and all that stuff. Hey, reach out to us on the channel if you have things that you think we'd like to sit around and watch two 30-something humanists dissect obsessively. But yeah, I mean, we got stuff planned. You and I are both planning future episodes, so we're trying to, I know we're busy with stuff to read for that. And but Clark, if you do get a chance to read Dune, I would really recommend it. I think whether or not we do more Dune themed videos, I'd love to. I do think it's a great work of the 20th century. Just because it's sci-fi and perhaps considered genre fiction. It does, like, it has so much to say about the way humans interact in the world, with our world, and with each other. And I mean, with, like we talked about in the earlier Dune episode, with globalization, I mean, it's just becoming more and more topical, really. Like, how do you mitigate conflict? How do you use resources? How do you, how does religion or belief in something, whether that's otherworldly or not, a belief in right and wrong, a belief in your nation, how does that impact the way what you do? I mean, that's just every day. That's just human life. And it's becoming more and more the mixing of cultures and new cultures being formed. I mean, that's also, again, too, that's always happened in the history of humanity, but it's just speeding up now. And it's just getting more and more noticeable because we're just speeding it up. People are talking more. Again, like we said, you're on the other half of the planet, and I'm on the other half of the planet, and we're 12-hour time difference, but we're doing this thing, talking about a movie that you went and watched in the theater, but I streamed online. I mean, this is just, I don't know. I'm not saying reading Dune will make the world a better place. I do think reading Dune helps at least point out some problems in human cultures that maybe we want to deal with as humans before we start I don't know, just challenging each other to knife duels. Although maybe there's something more noble about a knife duel than like a nuclear strike. I think there is. So maybe that's nice. Maybe at least there's that. If you're going to have combat, at least make it be one-on-one. I don't know. Any final words on the movie, Clark?
Well, I thought that with Leto Atreides, with Oscar Isaac's character, again, I'm just kind of watching it from a functional perspective, but it just was kind of funny to me that, I don't know, he really did not know how to play the game, because at least from everything I've seen in the movie, like again, you said the spoiler word already, but they make it clear that this was a trap.
Yeah.
Kind of like set up by the Emperor and the Harkonnen were happy to oblige them. And he doesn't recognize that he's just happy to take it up, when he doesn't realize that they're just handing him a hot potato.
Yeah.
And he tries to like set up good relations with the Fremen, but it never really carries on. And then when he's trying to like drill, like, or to harvest the spice, he comes off as a totally duty bound person. And he doesn't really understand like some of the more businessy things, like like marginal profits, the costs, like how much should I put in to get X amount of profit. So I thought it was kind of an interesting tragedy, if you will, of
Oh yeah.
someone who's very duty bound and tries to see things in a noble way, but he's just not really a good fit for that kind of a situation.
Yeah.
And you feel good at the end when he actually bites the poison pill,
Yeah.
just to be like, yeah, I've been nice my whole life. Here's a little bit of nastiness.
Yeah.
So I liked how he was able to bite the poison and be a little bit of a bastard at the end.
That whole bit in the book with the deception, Yui's deception and betrayal is just pure Shakespearean tragedy. It's clearly like Herbert was a reader of Shakespeare. It's clear that it's like this is Shakespearean tragedy, and I think it stands with Shakespeare's tragedies. I mean, again, I'm a fan of the book, but I'm like, this book has tons of stuff in it. It's got a lot. It has this but it has this clearly, yeah, tragedy of like that one person who has a strict code and just gets mowed over because he or she is unwilling to, bend, um, and unwilling to do certain things that are necessary to survive.
Because with the Harkonnen, even though, like you said, that they're all about pure power, for its own sake.
Control, power, wealth, for it's like they're just, yeah, all those things.
Even so, I thought that, they at least understood some of the, subtleties of how to wield power. Oh, okay, we're gonna give up, like this planet for a bit. Oh, but we're gonna sabotage the equipment, so it's gonna, all be just a total train wreck for them. Oh, okay, we come in and wipe them out. So,
Well, there's a
and,
thing.
and also the way that like the Baron, he says, "No, I'm not gonna, kill them." He says to the Bene Gesserit woman, "I'm not gonna kill them. The desert's gonna do that." So they, like fly them off to be thrown out. In that really cool, like the really cool fly helicopter.
Yeah, the ornithopters. Yeah, those are neat.
Yeah, that was great visually. I'm not an engineer, so to all my engineering friends, I have no idea if that's like a viable concept, but I hope it is because it's looked really cool.
It is cool. Yeah, there's a whole thing. Just to wrap it up, just before we wrap it up, just to finish that point, or to finish what you were to comment on what you just said. There is a whole bit. Again, everyone read the book. I recommend it. There is a feud structure in this world, as you tend to find in feudal societies. There's a certain way that you go about the houses fight in a certain way, and there's a structure to it. It's a structured feud, like vendetta, in Renaissance Italy, and it's called Canley, which is sort of a quasi Turkish word. Kanle is like bloody. So Herbert
Oh
is
yeah,
again
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
Khan means blood in Turkish,
blood,
and
yeah.
Gon is
So
yeah.
in the world of Dune they call it Canley, and so it's, or Conley, however you pronounce it, and so there is reasons why Atreides and Harkonnen hate each other, and it's not just because Harkonnen is like evil and quote unquote, and Atreides is good, quote unquote. There's actual reasons for it, and historical reasons. And so Conley was declared, and therefore, they are in constant conflict. Yet it's a Cold War conflict, at least until it blows up on Arrakis. And there's a structure to it. There's certain things you can and can't do in Canley, and so again, that's just not shown or not explained. It's shown but not explained in the movie because, again, there's so much detail in Dune, and if you're gonna, I mean, it's like you said, it's roughly the first third of the book, and it took them 2.5 hours. So like, you just gotta, there's things you just can't say or can't show. But there, yeah, part of the reason what's going on there is that there's steps being taken on both sides that is adhering to this way of feuding. So, yeah. Well, I think that's, again, Clark, if you had any other things to say, I think that was basically how I felt about it. I liked it. I recommend people watch it. I recommend people read the book more, but it's good. I liked it. I'll definitely watch it again. I'll definitely buy the fancy Blu-ray version. Hopefully we get there's a rumor that there's a 5-hour long cut that's out there of all the stuff that Villeneuve wanted but couldn't keep. And so hopefully they release that. Because I'm a Dune person. I'll eat it up. Dune is great. So more Dune, better. Anything, Clark, before we sign off here? And
Oh no, not really.
yeah,
I guess if somebody out, I know that its theatrical run is starting to run out, so my opinion isn't that important. But if anyone is interested, you know, if you haven't read Dune or anything, I guess I'd say go in, but kind of go in more for the visuals.
Yo, yeah.
There's a definite, there's definitely a plot there and there's some good things there, but I still felt that like the visuals are what put it into good movie territory for me.
Yeah. Incredible visuals.
And then also the score and everything.
Oh
So,
yeah.
in primarily the visuals I thought those were the best, but the score really helps.
Yeah.
And then with the plot, I can't really I didn't go through Dune, so I'd say it was fine, it was enjoyable, but it was more the visuals that made me have a good time.
Yep. I think it's a good way to sum it up. Anyhow, we'll stop geeking out, or at least we'll stop recording us geeking out. I'm certain we'll continue to geek out. Thanks everyone for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. We'll have another video hopefully coming up before the end of December. We hope probably be a little bit more bread and butter academic-y stuff, referencing works of philosophy or economics or something. But we had to come. I felt like we just needed to react to the film since we talked so much about it previously. All right. Thanks everyone. Bye.